Hey guys, this is the first Masters of Metal podcast. Hey, Andy and Bryan. My name is Tony. You guys probably know us from the forum if you're listening. This is going to be our first of several podcasts. Not sure how often it's going to be, but basically we're just going to do what we've been doing on the forum the past few years, talk about different things in metal that interest us, different topics that have come up recently, things going on in each of our lives. We've got, Andy here, and he's just been on tour, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. We'll see how it goes, and based on this one, we'll make some changes and keep things going. But right now, we're going to do some introductions. Like I said, my name's Tony, Metal Tony on the forum. Bryan and Andy are both here with me, Metal Bryan, and Andy changes his screen name every day, so I don't know what it is. Bryan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Bryan, one of the founders of the new version of the forum. Also keep it running as best as I can. Basically, just your normal run-of-the-mill metal guy, very opinionated. So if you're ready to argue, definitely don't want to be my friend. And I'll pass it off to Andy.
This is Andy. I have multiple screen names all the time. Currently, I'm under the moniker of Zordon. If you don't know who Zordon is, he was the mentor of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. He was just a floating head that seemed to stay obvious all the time. Anyway, I'm a lot like these guys. I've been into metal for a long time. Recently, I joined a touring band called Warbringer. You've probably seen them on tour because they tour every 3 months. They're on every tour ever. So, yeah, you've probably seen them at one time or another. I'm like Bryan, I'm very opinionated. So we go at it ourselves sometimes.
So that's those guys. I'm Tony, again, just a normal metal guy. I'm kind of like the middle guy between these two. They argue, and then I sit here and cry and wonder what went wrong in the universe. So we're going to go ahead and try to get some of that on tape here. So we're going to talk about some new metal releases first. I don't remember exactly what releases Bryan and Andy were going to cover, but Bryan, if you want to go ahead and start and talk about whatever new release you got going on right now that you've been listening to.
Well, I picked up a new Unleashed album recently, Odalheim. If you're not familiar with Unleashed, then you probably aren't a fan of death metal, because any self-respecting death metal fan listens to Unleashed. Basically, if you like Unleashed, this is just another notch in the belt for you. This is another amazing album from one of the best Swedish death metal bands who've ever existed, and you really couldn't do wrong getting this. You're going to find a whole lot of songs on here that stand out. It's just going to be one kick-ass release for 2012.
I was kind of disappointed that there was no songs about necrophilia or Lord of the Rings on that album.
Well, you know what? You really can only do Only the Dead once. And
I don't know, man. I like that.
It's hard to top the song when you already did it perfectly once.
True.
That's not what Iron Maiden says.
Oh, okay, I'll give you that. Andy, what album were you listening to lately?
I picked up the new Angel Witch album, As Above, So Below. If you don't know who Angel Witch are, that's kind of fair because they're one of the overlooked new wave of British heavy metal bands, even though they were one of the founders of that movement and of the style that we all love as we know it today. They kind of went overlooked because of the success of bands like Iron Maiden, even Priest, a different degree. I don't really consider Priest a part of that movement. I feel like they kind of were something else altogether, especially since they predate the movement itself. If you like any new wave of British heavy metal, if you're big on that stuff that came out in anywhere from 79 to about 84, 85, then you definitely want to pick up the new Angel Witch. It's kind of a continuation of the self-titled record that they put out, however many years ago. It's been a long time coming. It's a record that has reportedly been, it was one of those albums where it was like in limbo for a long time. They're like, yeah, we're doing this album, and then finally Kevin Hayborn, he puts it out. Their last record came out in '86, so it's 2012 now. A lot of these comebacks feel like a lesson in redundance in that they're typically either derivative or they pander to the times and they become very dated. But this record definitely isn't like that. You can hear that Angel Witch definitely wasn't done. It's a really solid effort. So if you like just kick-ass, straightforward new wave of British heavy metal, then it's going to be a good buy for you.
Would you say that it's similar to the comeback that Accept have had? Like their past couple albums have definitely been a big improvement and sort of a comeback for them.
I mean, in a different sense, because Accept they're a lot grittier than Angel Witch, but in the sense that they came out and they put out a kick-ass album, even though they didn't do anything groundbreaking, they reinvented themselves within the sound that they already established.
Right.
It's definitely a similar situation like that. it's of equal quality to their early stuff. It's just like picking up where they left off.
Now, I have a question. Wasn't Lee Altus playing with them for a time? Is he still with them?
No, he's not. He was with them for a little while, as was Darren Minter.
Oh, right on.
But there was something about visa issues, and then like Kevin Hayborn moved back. Yeah, he had passport problems, and he couldn't stay in the United States, so that incarnation of Angel Witch broke up, and he had to go back to the UK, and so Lee's doing Exodus and Heathen, so I can't imagine he'd be able to do all three.
True.
So
yeah, he'd be pretty busy.
Yeah, don't expect to hear Lee Altus on that album, but it is interesting that you bring that up, because if you're a fan of Heathen, then you can kind of trace a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal influences in their music to bands like Angel Witch.
All right, well, if that's all for Angel Witch, I was going to go ahead and talk about the new Overkill album. That's pretty predictable for me. If you don't know me, I'm a ridiculously huge Overkill fan. I like everything they've done, which is strange to some people, but I pretty much find merit in all their releases. But their last two records have really been going back to their old school thrash sound. Somewhere, it sounds like somewhere in between Horoscope and WFO, if you exclude I Hear Black. The Electric Age, it's not as good as Ironbound, I don't think, but it's definitely in the same vein. And if Ironbound was an A+, this is like an A-, I would say. So it's right up there with it. Same kind of like, really intense thrash riffing. Simple on the simple side of things, sure, but Overkill's never been overly technical. Bobby Blitz sounds just as amazing as ever. He hits some really high notes on this record. It blows my mind that he's in his 50s and that he's in, that good a shape vocally. And, the songwriting kind of doesn't come out as well as Ironbound. It's not quite as on the epic side, but it's definitely on the thrash side, minus one or two songs. And it's a worthy follow. So if you're not a fan of, post-horoscope Overkill, I think that this record, and as well as the last one, would definitely kind of bring you back into the fan zone for Overkill. I definitely recommend it. I don't think it'll be my album of the year like Ironbound was in 2010, but it's definitely up there.
No, I agree. I gave it a good listen a couple weeks back. I agree. It's very similar in direction to Ironbound, but it harkens back a little bit more to that middle era, and it's not quite as good to me as Ironbound, but it's still that A quality release, like you said it was.
I can attest to that. I got it around the same time that I picked up the latest Angel Witch, actually. It's totally a killer record. Like, when you think of Overkill, typically you think of, the classic output that they had. They had...
Definitely.
They're one of the only bands, I think, that have put out so many quality albums in a row. Like, a lot of bands will put out 1, 2, maybe 3 records, and then they'll put out, like, 1 or 2 bad ones, and then they'll put out a pretty good one, and then a great one, and then it kind of keeps going in that fashion. But Overkill haven't really put out a really terrible record. They put out, like, 5 straight-up badass records. And then they put out some albums that I wouldn't call any of them bad, but they're really hit or miss because they didn't pander to one side or the other. It was like, you either like it or don't.
Really stylistically kind of confused, too.
Yeah, some of it is like that. Overkill's always had kind of a rock and roll vibe to them. Like, that's never been an issue for me. I've always felt like at the very least, they've had that vibe to them, and I think I would say that's as a result of their, early punk rock stylings, like even before they were in the thrash scene. But yeah, they did kind of go through an identity crisis for a while, but even so, it still sounded very Overkill.
Definitely.
But like you said, the last 2 records, Ironbound, I haven't listened to it as extensively as probably you guys have, but the stuff I've heard off of Ironbound is great, and I've given the Electric Age a pretty good listen, and it's, from start to finish, it's just it's the Overkill that I've grown to love. It's the Overkill that I got into when I picked up albums like Horoscope and the Years of Decay and stuff like that. So it's definitely a positive thing. It gives you hope that, whenever Overkill calls it quits, because, it can't be that far off of how old they are, that they go out with a bang, You hate to see a band as classic as them go out with bottom tier record and that don't really do them justice. And I think if Overkill were to call it quits today, they would leave behind a legacy that's unparalleled in those bands.
Definitely.
And I just saw Overkill last night.
I agree 100%.
I just saw Overkill live last night.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
Yeah, they were great. Skeletor's guitar kept going in and out, but I think that is probably not something that happens all the time. The sound was kind of weak, but like the overall performance was great.
All right, next we're going to take a couple of minutes and talk about, one of us is going to talk about a band that we've been, listening to lately and we think deserves a little attention. Whether it's a signed band or unsigned band, or even a famous band, just anything in general that's really caught our attention recently. I know Bryan mentioned wanting to talk about, the Devil's Blood.
I recently caught the Devil's Blood tour with In Solitude, Behemoth, and Watain. I've been waiting to see them for a while now because ever since this whole, I hate to call it retro movement has come around where people are trying to emulate the earliest hard rock that inspired heavy metal, like Blue Oyster Cult, Cream, and Deep Purple, all that sort of stuff. I started trying to get into all those bands, and I of course run across the Devil's Blood because they seem to be rising to the top, and they recently signed with Metal Blade and got on this tour, so I was real excited to finally see them. I can really say they didn't disappoint. For having a show with 3 guitarists and a bassist, there's so many people on stage, and they still managed to put on a seamless performance, and everything just sounded perfect. I really couldn't have asked for anything better. As far as the band itself, they've been around for, I want to say 5 years since they first got their first demo out. I would say if you want to get into the band, I would just go ahead and just go in order of release, because that seems to be the best way for me, because their first EP and album are just absolutely fantastic. If you like that really old school sound, if you're looking for something that's more like a satanic version of Fleetwood Mac, then this is that very strange band that would fulfill that purpose for you. And I highly recommend that you check them out, because this is something very different from pretty much anything else out there right now.
Yeah, it is very different, and it's funny because you mentioned them touring with Behemoth and whatnot, so when I went to go check them out, I was expecting something more in the vein of like Ghost or similar bands, and yeah, there's some similarities, but when I heard them, like, for one, I didn't know they were female fronted until I actually listened to them, and then two, I didn't realize that they were a rock band, not a metal band. So it was really surprising that they're signed to Metal Blade, they're touring with Behemoth. Like, that's a really strange mixture to me, but it works. I listened to the latest album, the Thousandfold something or other.
Thousandfold Epicenter. Thousandfold Epicenter.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I listened to that, and like you said, it was satanic Fleetwood Mac. It was anti-cosmic chick metal at the end.
It's a very strange mixture.
It was really good. But it works. Like it's really somber, and I like that. Not everything. Like normally those kind of subjects are associated with extremely angry, evil sounding music, and it certainly has a dark vibe to it. But I like how somber and very, very calm it is a lot of times. And yeah, they get heavier at points, but there's a lot of acoustic work and a lot of really melodic sections, and I thought it was really good. I mean, I don't think I could listen to it all the time, but it's definitely something I can appreciate, and I'm definitely glad I checked it out. Pretty Bill.
Hey, do not call it Devil's Blood Bill.
For anybody who doesn't know, Bill means gay, in case you couldn't infer.
Andy notoriously is not a fan of what I already disdainfully called the retro movement going on right now.
It's not that I don't like music that has retro leanings at all, because I write music that have, I don't think anybody in the modern day can really write music without having some retro leanings of some sort. Obviously, a band like this kind of focuses more on retro stylings, but it's not really that bothers me about it. I think it's the presentation of the music that bothers me, and it seems like a cop-out and very, very childish to me. And I don't know if that's really the right way to put it, but that's the only way I can really explain it at the moment. And it's not that these bands technically are playing bad music. It's not that I think the music's awful. It's just that I feel like if you can go listen to the real thing that these bands are hearkening back to and get a much more fulfilling listening experience, because that was spontaneous at the time that it came out, and it wasn't something that was being focused on. It was like, oh, we're playing music and it happens to be coming out this way. Whereas I feel like bands like this, they try really hard to make themselves sound that way, and so that probably has to do with the music sounding forced in some cases to my ears. And I also just don't like the whole satanic theatric thing. I think that's dumb when any band does that. I understand it's entertainment and some people might think that I'm just being ridiculous because I'm taking issue with an aspect of their music that's just for presentation only, but I think that overall affects my ability to like the music because it's just like, oh, hail Satan and like all that shit, and it bothers me probably just as much as when like a Christian band is using their beliefs as propaganda. It's the same thing.
No, I agree, but at the same time, I think it's unfair to call the Devil's Blood a band that's like Ghost, who you can tell it's very much theatrical, and it's not really. It's like Merciful Fate. It's not something that they're actually out there saying "Hail Satan" and they actually mean it. Whereas the Devil's Blood, I can personally vouch just from seeing interviews with them and stuff. They're the real deal. They're actually not Gnostic Luciferians, and they're very legit about their lyrics and what they're going for. It's just I can agree somewhat with your opinions of them purposefully making their music sound retro and it being kind of strange because the Time of No Time Evermore had very good production and it was just a very straightforward rock album, and then the Thousandfold Epicenter came out and it was like they purposefully botched the studio sound and made it more trebly, killed like almost all the bass in the album just to make it sound like it was like a really old analog recording. And I thought that was a little stupid, even though I still like the music that's there.
I mean, again, regardless of the fact that I'm diametrically opposed to their beliefs, it bothers me just as much as when a band on the other end of the spectrum is like, they feel like they have to go out of their way to let everybody know, oh, yeah, we believe this. Like, our personal beliefs, this is what we believe. And we have to make sure that we're in your face about it.
I understand that. It's a little childish. It's sort of like basically a black metal band.
I mean, I get it. It's fun for people. I wonder, it just, it's a turnoff for me. Like, anytime a band starts doing that, I'm just like, I can't listen to this.
I wonder how you would feel about Theocracy. I'm interested. Have you listened to them?
I have, and I actually dig them a lot. That doesn't mean I don't take issue with certain things, but I don't think that they're outwardly in your face about it. And the reason that I say that is because I didn't know that they were a Christian band until somebody pointed it out to me. So
yeah, that's why I like Theocracy too. Is because I think when you actually look at it, you can tell they're a Christian band. But if you're just sitting there listening to them, they just sound like every other decent power metal band out there.
Well, and let me clarify that I'm not saying more people shouldn't write about their personal philosophies. And obviously if you're a Christian, then there's no reason that you shouldn't put that in your music. I just hate when people market themselves and they have to use that label to draw in other people because it's propaganda.
Yeah, it's kind of like dropping an anvil, you know what I mean? When you write a book, you don't want to have like that very obvious author, filibuster in there. I mean, unless you're Ayn Rand, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's
kind of the same thing in music.
You should absolutely represent your beliefs. I just think that there's a right way to do that and a wrong way to do that because, if I was playing in a Christian band, I wouldn't go and say, oh, by the way, guys, we're Christian and I need to make sure you know that by telling you every 5 minutes. Because that is propaganda to me. You're trying to pander to a specific market instead of actually being real about it and trying to pander to everybody by literally just going, yeah, these are our beliefs, but we're playing music. And I'm not going to try and, place emphasis on this one specific thing. Obviously, I'm not going to, deny my beliefs, and I'm not going to pretend I don't have them. And it doesn't mean I won't talk about them at any given time. It just means that shouldn't be your sole marketing ploy. It shouldn't be,
I agree.
Oh, yeah, guys, you need to know that this about us. Because if people listen to the music, they'll figure that out themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I think the music should really speak for itself when it comes to marketing your band.
Mm-hmm. I agree completely.
Regardless of your beliefs, that's just how it works. And, a lot of people don't pay attention to lyrical content. I do. It's something that I think it's part of the holistic musical experience. Obviously, the actual notes, being heard and the compositions, all that's the main part. But the lyrical content should be able to represent what you're hearing in a way that really hits home. And that's so I always try to connect with the lyrics, whether the lyrics are serious or they're just telling a story or whatever. I feel like they accompany the music in the sense that they're supposed to represent it vocally.
Yeah, definitely. Should always match the kind of tone of the album.
Yeah, and I feel like some bands don't even pay attention to that. Sometimes that makes it hard for me to take the music serious as a result. Because if you're not going to take your music serious, then why should I?
Well, it's like when you listen to a joke band, you only get so into it. I think there's a lot of bands I like them because they're stupid and they're funny, but I don't have the same kind of appreciation that I do for a band that is more serious about it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's night and day. You take a band like Ailstorm, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they don't take themselves serious, and I don't think anyone in their fan base, at least I hope not. I don't hope that none of them take them serious either, because that's totally not the goal there. They're like a band that's just having fun and pretending to be pirates and stuff like that, and that's their gimmick. And they're upfront about it. Like, yeah, this is our gimmick. This is what we do. We just do it for fun. It's not a serious thing. And so while it's still art, it's not art in the same sense, because it's art that's meant to entertain, and it's not art that's meant to really go to the next level and say something to you.
Yeah, definitely.
The band that I want to promote is actually a band that I don't expect anybody to know about, because they don't seem to market themselves that well. They're a local band to St. Louis, and they're called Blackfast. The best comparison I can make in the modern day is Vector, and even that's not really representative, because while Vector has a heavy influence on thrash, whereas Blackfast they're definitely technical and progressive, but they don't stick to that one thing, because you hear stuff that's akin to a band like Atheist in there, and then all of a sudden you hear Watchtower, and then all of a sudden you hear jazz fusion stuff in a metal context. I don't know, they're all over the place, but they've clearly listened to a lot of those bands, bands like Watchtower, Toxic, stuff like that. But they have a dark edge to their music, they're really energetic, and it's something that I wish more people would do, because, all the individual parts are not groundbreaking, but when you put them all together in the way that they have, it makes for some really original music. And I can tell you, they are really passionate about what they do. They're serious about it. They opened for us when we were touring, when we were on the end of the Symphony X tour. We were headed home. We were on a routing show. We weren't expecting much. It was one of those things. Yeah, okay, we're gonna listen to local acts, and it's not that I have a problem with local acts. I just feel like a lot of them aren't serious about it, or they're not practiced enough to really get the point across. And these guys just they showed up. They had fucking Rivera amps and sewer guitars, and I'm like, oh, this will be interesting. And from the first note, I was hooked in. I was like, this band is the real deal. This guy's kick ass. And promised them that I would promote them at some point. So that's what I'm doing right now. They're definitely a band that deserves to be heard. And if you're into interesting progressive styled metal that has elements of thrash, death, and black metal, as well as even classic prog, then you definitely want to check out Blackfast.
Yeah, Andy.
That sounds.
Andy recommended them to me not long ago, and I checked them out on their Reverb Nation page. They have a MySpace as well, but they don't really take care of that at all. I'll echo the sentiments that they really do have something sort of original going on. And it's not that they have individual talents that are absolutely amazing. It's that when you put all of them together, the music that they've created is something that not a lot of other young bands are putting out right now, and I think they deserve more attention than they're marketing themselves for.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. I actually didn't get a chance to listen to them yet, but you sold me right there, that description definitely sounds like, and I feel like that's a band I'd want to see live too, since, the live performance is what sold you.
Oh, they're great. I mean, they didn't say anything. They just came out and they kicked ass. They were energetic. These guys were the real deal. They had real equipment. They were well rehearsed. It's clear that all they do is sit around and write songs. And that's another thing, is amidst all the chaos in their music, all the changes, all the abrupt changes, all the things that come out of nowhere, it transitions surprisingly well. And they've written it in such a way that it's still catchy and the songwriting is there.
But yeah, in case anybody's interested, definitely check them out on Reverb Nation. You're just going to look for Black Fast. That's two different words. And like I said, they have a MySpace as well. I'm not sure if that's the best place to get a hold of them because it doesn't look like they take care of it at all.
And nobody uses MySpace, right?
Yeah, nobody uses MySpace anymore, but they don't have a Facebook page, so check them out on check them out on Reverb Nation.
Right on. Well, definitely will. I know I will be. Well, speaking of progressive music, I wanted to talk about the band Triosphere, and they're a progressive, heavy power metal band from Norway. And one of our forum members randomly turned me on to this band in one of our threads. She was just like, hey, check this band out. And normally when somebody throws something at me, I'm like, this probably isn't going to be that great. And then I heard this album, their second album, The Road Less Traveled, that came out in 2010, and it just completely floored me. I've listened to it like 45 times, and that's not hyperbole either. It's progressive music, but there's also elements of heavy metal, speed metal, and then just like straight up kind of like Pagan's Mind and even Dream Theater-esque influence in there. So it's really proggy, but then, there's also still, it's very riff-based and it's very powerful. And the interesting thing is it's a female-fronted band. And normally, a lot of times you associate that with, things like Nightwish and Epica and very operatic and sort of gothy at times. But Ida Hochland, I think that's how you say her name, their singer, she's kind of like an Elisa Martin from Dark Moor in that she's very, very much a metal singer. You know what I mean? This woman bleeds heavy metal. She plays the bass, she writes all the lyrics, she produces the albums, and her voice is just very raw and very strong. And she doesn't have a great range necessarily, but it's just so powerful, and it's really raspy too, and it adds this like whole new atmosphere to the already great music. And it's really impressive that she can pull this off live too while playing the bass. So it just makes for this really unique package. Their first album it's really raw. I don't like it as much. It's a good album, but the Road Less Traveled, their second album, it's a work of art from beginning to end. And there's lots of piano sections and keyboard arrangements and really kind of like a lot of jazzy solos, but then also a lot of like kind of Latin influenced solos that come up that are really cool, and it adds kind of a different layer to each song. And at one point, they even go into like a total Megadeth homage mode. It kind of caught me off guard at first, but this one song, "The Death of Jane Doe," the second half, it goes into this complete speed metal Megadeth riff, complete with like radio news clipping voiceovers and like a complete like Chris Poland solo over it, and it's really cool. And it's fast, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. But those little things that they do kind of add to this overall effect of the album. And so Triosphere is really, like, they came out of nowhere, and they're one of my new favorite bands, and probably one of my favorite bands ever now. And I haven't been this excited about a new band in a long time, especially a female-fronted band, because they're really unique for that kind of style. And I don't really know who to compare them to in the modern scene. Old Dark Moor, for sure, without all the Rhapsody influence. A lot kind of Pagan's Mind-ish, and a lot of old speed metal. Sentinel Beast, kind of. There's some Sentinel Beast influence, I would say. I think they're playing with them soon, actually.
Do that?
But yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's. I think you would like them, actually, Andy, because they're very much in that kind of like we were talking about, like the lyrics and the music. It's all very conceptual. It has a point to it. And but yeah, Triosphere. I would definitely check them out.
Yeah, that sounds great, actually. I think I have heard Triosphere before. Like, I've heard a track here or there, and I remembered liking it a lot. Like you were saying, they have some, like, Latin influences in some places, which a band that they could, in that regard, when they're doing that kind of a thing, that they could be compared to, in some sense, is a band like Myrath. I don't know if you've heard Myrath, but, like, they're...
Yeah, they have a very... Well, since they're from the Middle East, they have a very Middle Eastern brand to their progressiveness.
Oh, right on. I haven't listened to them very much.
I heard some things that could be, kind of in that same realm. I noticed that Triosphere was female-fronted, and typically when I hear female-fronted stuff, I'm like, oh, here we go. Another metal band with a female singer. But Triosphere... Actually,
another Nightwish, another whatever.
Well, they actually totally, like, they made it work. Whatever they're doing, they need to keep.
It's because she has that voice that's more, like he said, it sounds like Alyssa Martin from early Darkmoor. It's like there's a dude singing, except it's a girl. It's not like she's up there.
It's approached the same way as if it was a guy.
Yeah, it's not up in those high ranges. Yeah,
like this she is metal, you know what I mean? She does not, there's no gimmick here. She's not some doll up on stage in a dress. She's just doing what she loves to do.
which is awesome.
No, I agree. It's
Yeah,
definitely some awesome music that they're making right now.
yeah, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think I always enjoy seeing bands like this because I think it helps deconstruct certain stereotypes about metal. You know, a lot of people see metal as very kind of like misogynistic, sort of, and it's very like for, testosterone driven males or whatever, which we know is not the truth. But, when you have gimmicky female fronted bands, a lot of times that helps feed those misconceptions because people think that, oh, they just like the singer because she's good looking. But I like bands like Triosphere because they help deconstruct this sort of like mentality and stereotype. So I think it does a lot of things, not just musically, but socially, that are good for metal. Anyway, I think that's probably good for new bands. We've been going on for a while now. We should wrap this up. And Andy, if you wanted to talk a little more about tour with Warbringer, I think that would be a really good thing to end on.
All right, so recently I joined the American heavy metal band Warbringer. It is an interesting experience because one of the longtime members of the band decided that he needed to leave. He has some personal problems going on that he needs to take care of, and so he made the choice to step out because you got to take care of certain things in your life before you can do the things that you want to do. So I was asked to step in for him, and possibly at the time I wasn't going to be permanent. It was, I'll do this tour and we'll find out if where we go from there. I had 10 days to learn something like 15 or 16 songs. For a lot of people, that would have been impossible, but I've known the band for years. I've known them since they were a signed band. And so I pretty much walked in the door and I knew most of their songs already. So it was pretty simple transition. The very unique thing about this whole experience was that this is my first real band that I've been in. I mean, I've had bands that I've tried to start up on my own, but because of where I was living at the time, it made it so it was nearly impossible for me to do anything efficient and serious because I was the only one who seemed to really care about it. You have a lot of people that go, well, you can't make a living off music. You can't, it's just a stupid dream. And I was always the guy growing up that said, I'm not going to listen to any of these people because this is all I want to do with my life. So, this opportunity came to me and I took it over, and we had this really long 8-week tour. I've never been on a tour in my life before that. And we toured with Symphony X and Iced Earth. We did a North American tour. We went all through Canada, and we did all the really major markets on the East Coast. And the really cool thing for me was I got to spend a lot of time with guys that I've looked up to since I was a kid. Michael Romeo, who plays guitar for Symphony X, he was really cool to me from the get-go, and he's one of my biggest influences musically, so that was quite an experience. I learned a lot from him, from just watching him play every night to him actually giving me, actually sitting down with me and showing me how to do certain things. And so that was a great experience. That whole band's great. Everybody in that, all the guys in Symphony X, they're just normal guys that like to have a good time, and they love, metal, and they love good music. And it's really interesting to find out that people like that, you see them on stage, you listen to their albums, and you're like, dude, how does anybody make music like this? And you wonder what kind of people they're like. And then you meet them, and they're all like, they all have families and kids, and they're as normal as you or I. And it was just really cool because it wasn't weird. It wasn't like, oh, I'm hanging out with a bunch of rock stars. It was, you're hanging out with a bunch of regular guys that just happen to love the same kind of music that you do. It was a pleasant experience to find that out about them. Also, we toured, as I said before, we toured with Iced Earth, and it was a co-headlining tour. So Symphony X and Iced Earth were both playing an hour and a half a piece per night, but they were switching who would play last, every day. It was alternating, and it was really hectic. But John Schaefer, who plays for Iced Earth, he's the mastermind behind it. He started the band, and he's really the only, consistent member in the band as a result. The guy is pretty cool to be around, because even though, when you see him from afar, you kind of think, oh yeah, this guy's probably not the most pleasant of people to be around, and that's just not true. I mean, even if it were, it would be understandable. I got to find out his life story in some ways. He told me, he grew up on the streets, basically. He had to basically squat in houses. He was homeless for a while, and he still had the band going. This was when they were called Purgatory. He went through a lot of hardships, and he somehow, by 1990, it got Iced Earth really kicking. and he managed to survive the downtimes of metal in the 90s. As a lot of you probably know, the only band that really saw success in the 90s was Pantera, and a lot of us, I think, can agree that they're part of the reason why a lot of metal these days is really watered down. They took the I don't want to say caveman approach, because there are some bands that do that really well and they produce good music, but Pantera just really, I think, they appealed to, the primitive culture of the time, and Iced Earth managed to sustain themselves through that. And so getting to talk to John Schaefer, you find out this guy's really interesting, because he did what we were doing back then. He didn't always have, he wasn't always successful. He had to starve for a long time. He went through periods of time where he didn't even know if he was going to get paid, but he was just like living and breathing metal. He drove around the country in a van like we do, and he just rammed metal down to everyone's throats, basically. While everybody was busy listening to Pantera, he was like, no, you're going to listen to some true metal, and then he just played Night of the Storm Rider riffs and just raped you, and you had no say in it. And so it's cool, because you think a lot of guys in bands are like, it's just an image. We kind of put them up on a pedestal, and it's like, oh, that guy's so awesome, he did this and that. And off stage, they're kind of fake. But Schaefer's exactly the same on stage as he is off stage. He's totally metal to the core, and he lives by his convictions. He's totally straight up, and on stage he's a badass, and off stage he's badass. There's not much I can say other than the guy really welcomed me into the Iced Earth family of sorts, because even though I'm not in the band, he recognized me. I didn't even tell the guy my name, and he knew it already somehow. I mean, he took the time to find out these things, and he showed a lot of respect. And even though sometimes, he had to kind of get on people's cases, and he had to be a hard ass, the guy's worked so hard that I can't imagine him having been any other way, at this point. It's like, how do you get that far? How do you become successful like he is? How do you accomplish what he has without really being assertive and, being aggressive in your approach to how you do those things, whether it's musically or just, on a business standpoint. And the guy really, he walks the walk. As some of you might know, he's a staunch libertarian, and that's really cool for me, because I identify with a lot of that. He's really politically involved, and so I got to hang around that too. He likes to talk about it, and some things I don't agree with what he says, but overall I think he's on the money. And so on top of everything else, he appears to be a real American patriot, and that's something that I wish more people were sincere about, because you see a lot of bands that they write these lyrics, and all they're doing is just pandering to the anger that people have in response to the times. But John Schaefer is like you or I. He has a big problem with the way things are being run, and he's not just writing about it. He's actually going out and being active in trying to change the way things are. So I gotta hand it to the guy. He's larger than life in a lot of ways. Not only does he work hard on his music, but he really works hard to live by the things that he claims to care about. And you don't see that a lot. I can't say anything but positive things about John Schaefer. He's totally with it. He has a good head on his shoulders, and he's the voice of experience. And so that was cool for me, because I listened to a lot of Iced Earth growing up, and he is totally the person you would think. He's very straightforward. He believes everything he says, and he lives by it. And that's just, you couldn't ask for anything more. The guy is a true metal legend, really.
As far as the whole touring experience itself, I'm just interested in what it was like going day to day, and then before and after shows have lots of bands coming up to you to talk to you and such.
At first, it was kind of hard to get used to, because I was like, I really wanted to play in this band, but I didn't know, what it was like, because they tour in a van, which means we have to live in a van. It's not really hard. I mean, there are certain things that I think could be more efficient, just from a personal perspective. That's just me looking in from the outside. But it's not really a hard day-to-day thing. You get really used to it. It becomes you just got to get into the routine like anything else, because when you're on the road, it's like a job. Obviously, we're all there for the same reason. We love the music and we want to play the music. But the reality is that being in a touring band is the same thing as running a business. So, you gotta you got to get up and take care of business, before you can have fun. And so, that means very long drives sometimes. Everybody has to take turns driving the van, which can be tedious because nobody wants to drive. It's every day. It's like, oh, who's driving tonight? Because, people argue over like, oh, well, I drove last night. I'm not doing it again. It becomes this really stupid thing. It's funny how much we devolve when we're put in situations like that. But, you get in the routine and you get used to sleeping in a van. Sometimes we slept in hotels. A lot of the reason we sleep in the van is not because we have to, it's because we want to save money. And so sometimes you got to bite the bullet. And in order for all of us to come home with cash and actually feel like we're getting somewhere, with the state of the industry, you got to find ways to eliminate costs. And so that's what we do. The experience as far as, dealing with fans, some of them, no one at shows complained about me being a replacement, but I saw there was only one particular fan that really had a big a big problem with it. But I don't really care what he thinks, and he's not somebody that I think anybody should have as a fan. He's just a douchebag. Like, he's very arrogant. I'm not going to say his name because it doesn't do any justice, but he's one of those people that. He thinks that bands were put on this planet to serve him. That's the mentality he seems to have. And so it's like, yeah, I don't want to have fans like that. But other than that, it was a very positive experience. A lot of fans, were welcome, open arms. I had a lot of people come up to me and go like, hey, man, dude, like, you totally raised the bar. I've had some people even say they forgot entirely about Adam. And, I mean, that sucks because, Adam's a friend of mine, and he, he's a great guy. And I think his tenure with the band was cool because the stuff that he wrote was representative of him. And I'm not interested in stomping on his legacy or anything like that, which is part of why I don't play his leads. I play my own, and I improvise every night. I don't get the feeling that was something that Adam did. I don't think he improvised a lot. I think it was something he just, he played what was written. But I like to explore a lot, and it seems like the fans responded really well to it. And the band overall seemed a lot more revitalized because, when somebody knows that they're leaving a band, as you can imagine, they kind of don't seem to, and I'm just repeating what I've been told by, fans and such that saw them, right before Adam left. And they said that it seemed like he had already checked out. And I suspect that is, a product of him just kind of being bummed out about it, like he's not going to be a part of it anymore. And I feel like maybe he thought it was like, he's already out before he really was out. And so, and that sucks. But, the general consensus was that I pumped a lot of life back into the band because I had never done any of these things. And I haven't had enough time to be jaded yet, So I have that, youthful energy, and I want us all to be as best as we can be. So we've been, just really tight. The live performances have been energetic. I don't know what else to say about it. I've just had, I've had an overall positive response. People, I signed a lot of autographs. I can tell you that, which was cool for me because it's a humbling experience. Like anybody thinks that you're that good that they want you to sign something that they have because they want to remember that. There's no better feeling than that to feel like even though I didn't write any of that music. I used my own voice in a live setting, and that touched people. And so for me, that was that was really cool. You get to interact with fans, and as somebody who's a fan of heavy metal music myself, I understand exactly where these people are coming from when they they tell you how great of a show it was, and how it really they really appreciate you coming out and playing for them, and it's overwhelmingly awesome because I don't feel like the kind of camaraderie that you experience in the metal scene is something that's prevalent in all other kinds of music. It's not that it doesn't exist in other forms of music, but it seems like the metal community is more tight-knit than most because it's more of a culture, more of a subculture than a lot of other scenes are. In a lot of the styles of music, it's like, yeah, everybody loves the music, and I'm sure they feel the same passion for it. But it seems like a lot of people are fighting each other over like what's better and what isn't. And while that does still exist within metal, when you go to a metal show, you don't see a lot of people giving each other a hard time. You see a lot of people that are united in their love for the music, and that's really cool to me.
No, I agree. I actually caught, well, you know this, but I caught you guys on your Orlando date with Iced Earth and Symphony X. And man, I thought y'all put on a really, really good show. I'm not particularly a huge fan of Warbringer, at least all the stuff they put out to this point. But the live show itself, really energetic. It was fun to watch. I thought you really did bring a different dimension to that band as far as live, and I enjoyed seeing you on stage. It was really cool, and I definitely look forward to seeing more stuff from you with Warbringer.
As do I, and I was really sad that I didn't get it, that you guys didn't come here on that tour, and I was really looking forward to it. I remember still seeing you in Vector Sigma at your high school playing Agent Steel, which was still a really cool experience, but to see you with Warbringer, I mean, that's something we talked about for years, so, I mean, I can't wait for the first day that I'm able to, because it's going to be really surreal. I know that much.
Yeah, it was surreal for me. Like the first show, I was kind of shaky when we were playing, and it wasn't because I was nervous. It was because it was like somebody gave me a shot of adrenaline, like a big one. It was just like boom, because it was like I hadn't really had a lot of experience playing live, and it was like we just kind of showed up and no one knew who I was. I didn't come from an established band. I didn't come from, another band in the scene. There were a lot of other people that could have, ended up getting the spot, but I was chosen specifically. So that's also kind of humbling because it's like they thought I was better than these other people who have, established themselves and put out music that people already appreciate. And they went with me because they feel like I'm the best bet as far as raising the bar for them on future releases, and ultimately just raising the bar and the performance in general. And so that's obviously I'm my own worst critic, but to have other people feel that way about the way I do things and the way that I play, it definitely is inspiring, and it gives you more confidence because you're like, yeah, I could go out there and kick ass. Wouldn't have chosen me if I couldn't. The first show was crazy, but like after you get in the groove of it, where it's like every night you play a show, you just like you figure out what works and what doesn't. You figure out like what kind of personality works for you on stage, because you kind of have to feel yourself out, which of these emotions are spontaneous and what's actually going on in my head. You kind of have to clear your head. You can't think too much. You have to just go out and play. And, obviously I was chosen mainly for my lead playing. That was pretty much what was communicated to me. And at first, I got to be honest with you, my lead playing wasn't that great in a live setting. It was like I could play really crazy shit backstage, but I hadn't yet figured out how to transition that, that sense of calm and confidence to the stage yet when it came time for me to do those things. And after we, played, whatever, like 60 shows, it was like, by that time, I was just coming out and it was like, guns blazing. Like I pretty much knew what I was doing.
All right, yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll wrap this up a little bit since we're getting up here toward the hour mark. And, we only got a few more things we wanted to mention before we wrapped up the episode. I know, first off, I did want to give a shout out to my friends in Seven Kingdoms. Anyone who's not familiar with my past, I used to be their singer. I helped start the band, and I was on their first album. Just wanted to give a shout out to them because they recently wrapped up on their third album, which I was glad to be a part of and helped write some of the lyrics on it for. And Tony actually helped me with some lyrics as well. I just wanted to give a shout out, let y'all know that the album's finished, and it definitely is going to take them to a level that y'all are not used to. And you're definitely going to be hearing some more from Seven Kingdoms. Hopefully land them on some more tours so y'all can see them around not only North America, but hopefully over in Europe.
And around town.
Yeah, they will definitely be seen around town.
Yeah, and they were gracious enough to let me hear the pre-production, or not pre-production, whatever, the first mix of the album, and except for one song that I know Andy isn't gonna like, the album it's freaking awesome, and it's worlds above their second album, and it's really just kick-ass power metal from start to finish, and the last song is even tear-inducing, not just because of the subject matter and how grand the scale is in the song. And it really is going to be a great release for 2012, especially holding the torch for American power metal, which, you got to give them props for that. But, I mean, the first album is always going to be near and dear to my heart, so, you know what? Fuck the rest of you.
So you said there's a song on there that I'm not going to like?
There's one song in particular.
It's called. Can I say the name of it? Is that allowed?
I don't think they've released their track.
Name.
They haven't released their track list yet, so let's not mention it yet, Tony.
The song has a name, and the beginning, you're going to hear it, and you're going to go, that's fucking wrestling music.
Oh,
man.
I think it's more so not that the song's not good. I actually like the song a lot. I think it's just where they placed it on the album it's a little bit awkward. So that might be my only gripe about the album. Otherwise, everything else is absolutely perfect. I don't think they could have possibly done better.
Oh, I was just saying, Andy. I know he had certain reservations about certain guitar riffs, and I know he's not gonna like that one. The rest of the song, sure, it's just the intro riff.
Yeah, the intro riff kind of after the song before it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it definitely goes off a vibe that Andy is not
really
gonna like.
It's different from the rest. Yeah, basically. But like I said, it's a great record, and you know, Camden and Sabrina and all them and Aaron and
fuck that.
They all really did fuck you, Aaron. Sorry, Andy said so. They all really pulled out all the stops this time, and it's really going to be a great record. So definitely glad we mentioned that.
Speaking of Aaron, on the related news also going on with us in the Masters of Metal, Tony and Aaron and I have Vermiform still going on here, and the third album is on its way to completion. Probably, hopefully, get it out before the end of 2012. But we will definitely be having an EP coming out very soon with some re-recordings of the stuff off of Everlasting Horror, just to improve, since we have better quality recording equipment now and a new direction. We wanted to go back and improve some of those songs and show a little bit of where we're going instead of hitting you with a completely different sound on the next album just out of nowhere.
It's still going to be pretty drastic, I think. It's like the first album, it's like really dumb obituary worship that I wrote in one night, and it was fun. And then
yeah,
the second album, it's
a lot of the lyrics on the first album too are just kind of lyrics I kind of shat out most of them, and it was just fun lyrics and stupid subject matter. It was just fun music.
Dude, you did a song about The Thing. So that's automatically the most metal thing that could ever be done. And so you guys can't stop that.
And that's going to be on the EP too, just because that's such a fun song. It's. I mean, The Thing will take your life. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, dude. First album only, dude.
First album only.
First album only. Yeah, and hopefully Andy can put some leads down on this for us, because that would really complete the package. I think it would really accent.
That is something that I want to do. I want to find the time for that.
Yeah, if there's time.
Yeah, I mean,
it's always the issue.
At some point, there's going to be time for me to do something like that on one of the related projects that we have. You know, it's going to happen at some point. It's just a matter of when. Joining this band has turned my life upside down.
Well, you have a lot of touring and dates coming up for summer festivals and stuff, so...
Actually, the Warbringer tour with Destruction starts...
Yeah, Andy's getting ready to leave on tour the day after we record this to head out with Destruction and go back around America again.
Luckily, it's only I'm back in early June, so I'm not going to be gone that long.
We probably will have an episode of the podcast in between now and then. I think we're going to get Patrick in on this with just me and Tony and go over something they have going on, which I know they just finished some demo material and it sounds absolutely amazing. And I know Andy and Tony can agree with me. It's definitely something that this forum and all of us are going to be proud of.
I heard some of what was going on with that. And I gotta tell you, dude, I mean, I knew Patrick was, a decent singer, but he totally, came out and kicked ass on that material. the stuff I heard from him, it was like he sounded very polished. He sounded like he knew what he was doing. He didn't sound like somebody who accidentally stumbled upon vocal talent. He just like has it. He didn't accidentally sound good. There are a lot of musicians who don't really know what they're doing, and they kind of come across those little things that sound great. But Patrick sounded like he really knew what he was doing. He sounded like he had full control of his voice, and I was impressed with that. And so I hope that I can use his talents for something that one of the projects I do going forward at some point, because I think he has the ability to add a new dimension to probably anything that he takes part in.
Yeah, I was definitely very impressed with what he did on that first song. Him and Camden really did. They spent the whole afternoon on it, and I think it really came out well. And I mean, as soon as I heard Patrick sing the first time, I was like, dude, we got to do a band together. That's because that's what I do anytime I hear somebody sing. I'm like, record music with me, And I was really excited by what he put out, and and he didn't believe me at first because I was like, it sounds really unique, and he's like, you're full of shit, Tony. And I'm like, no, dude, I mean that seriously. This is fucking killer. I mean, I was really happy, and I get all fucking excited about it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with the rest of that.
Yeah, I think on the next episode of the podcast, we'll give you all a little preview of that project, and like I said, we'll have Patrick in here to go over some of it with us and discuss some other topics with us. Real quick before we wrap up, I do want to mention also regarding Patrick, his dad runs a festival in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's going to be coming up here pretty soon. I believe early July. It's a Pathfinder Metalfest IV. And that is going to feature some pretty awesome bands from all over North America and I believe from South America as well. Yes, it's going to be on July 7th, 2012. That's a Saturday. And if you want to get tickets, you can get them on ticketalternative.com. The headliners for it are While Heaven Wept, who I think are extremely underrated and probably one of the best bands in America right now as far as the really just epic, I don't want to say doom metal, but just really epic metal sound, almost symphonic, and they're definitely a force to be reckoned with and somebody who I wish got more attention. In support, there's of course Theocracy, who we mentioned earlier in the podcast.
Cool, kick ass.
They're another amazing live band. And to wrap it up, there's also Lorengard, who have been around for a while in the underground, who are also very good. Void of Reason, Brave, Dracon, and Machinage, who are the band from South America. They're from Brazil, and I confirm that they also kick ass. So if you're interested in seeing Pathfinder Metalfest IV, it's going to be July 7th, 2012 in Atlanta, Georgia. Like I said, you get those on www.ticketalternative.com. Is there anything else you all wanted to add before we wrap up here?
Fuck a war.
Dude, fuck a war. I was there in 95. You guys don't know shit.
Yep. See you all around town.
Alrighty.
See you around the U.S.